All worlds begin with Demon Slayer. This video is purely for entertainment and does not infringe on copyrights or laws. The rights to the novel and image belong to the original author. We do not claim ownership. Don't like waiting and want to listen to this fanfic in full now? Subscribe to our Patreon, where you'll find the best fanfics. Chapter 776, The Power of Xingming on the Sad Island. Breath of the Moon, Landform, Long Night, Solitary Moon, Infinity. Beaming Giyu, Gyomai and Kokushibo launched attacks at the same time. The two attacked and defended, and suddenly waves of aftermath and sparks flew out one after another. As for the strength of the moves, Kokushibo's Long Night, Solitary Moon, Infinity was better. However, Beaming Giyu Gyomai still used Skin of Rock Body to block most of Kokushibo's slashes and weakened the damage of Kokushibo's attacks. Although Kokushibo's attacks left a lot of bloody wounds on Beaming Giyu Gyomai's back, those bloody wounds were not deep and could only be considered minor injuries, which did not have much impact on Beaming Giyu Gyomai's battle. I haven't seen him for a few years, and this guy has become stronger. Kokushibo saw that his attack did not have much impact on Beaming Giyu Gyomai, and he couldn't help but sigh in his heart. And in the process of the two's moves colliding, Beaming Giyu Gyomai turned around and threw an axe at Kokushibo's neck. Kokushibo immediately took the initiative to distance himself from Yumi, and Yumi forced Kokushibo back and immediately retreated to a safe place. At this time, Tomioka seemed to have lost consciousness and fainted. The whole person collapsed on the ground, motionless. Seeing that Tomioka was motionless, Yumi stopped paying attention to him for the time being. It's been a few years since we last met. Your strength is much stronger than before. Kokushibo took the initiative to talk to Yumi. Yumi did not pay attention to Kokushibo, but adjusted his state, and then threw the meteor hammer and axe connected by the iron chain at Kokushibo at the same time. Rock breathing, one type, axe hammer double meteor. Kokushibo easily changed the flight trajectory of the axe by swinging his sword and slashing it first. But the axe swung by Beaming Giyu Gyomai was very powerful. Although Kokushibo easily hit the axe, the powerful force still pushed Kokushibo's body half a meter to the side. When Beaming Giyu Gyomai suddenly stepped on the iron chain into the ground with his foot, the meteor hammer that was originally moving horizontally suddenly fell from top to bottom towards Kokushibo's head. Rock breathing, second form, meteor hit the earth. Faced with the change in the trajectory of the meteor hammer's attack, Kokushibo did not choose to accept Beaming Giyu Gyomai's attack again this time. If he accepted Beaming Giyu Gyomai's attack this time, even if Kokushibo could resist it, his body might be nailed to the ground like a nail. Kokushibo twisted his ankle, turned his body to one side, and then dodged sideways. Just as Kokushibo was dodging the meteor hammer attack from meteor hitting the earth, Beaming Giyu Gyomai suddenly used a clever trick to control the chain again. The chain connected to the axe suddenly turned a big circle and wrapped around Kokushibo's neck. Kokushibo suddenly swung his knife at the chain around his neck, but he couldn't cut it. It can't be cut. It seems that this guy has specially strengthened his weapon after that battle. Kokushibo thought to himself. Just as Kokushibo swung his knife at the chain that was wrapped in a circle quickly tightened. Kokushibo immediately squatted down to prevent the tightening chain from pinching his neck. Chapter 777 Invitation. From the battle between Beaming Giyu Gyomai and Kokushibo, we can see that Beaming Giyu Gyomai is very powerful. Even Tomioka cannot keep up with Kokushibo's rhythm. Beaming Giyu Gyomai can not only keep up with Kokushibo's attack, but also has spare strength to fight back. Although Kokushibo also has spare strength, Beaming Giyu Gyomai also has spare strength. However, this does not mean that Beaming Giyu Gyomai has a big chance of winning. The moment Kokushibo squatted, there was only a crisp sound, and the circle formed by the iron chain tightened, and then hit together heavily, and finally cut off a section of Kokushibo's long and flowing hair. However, after Kokushibo avoided the double teaming of the iron chain, Kokushibo did not let himself stay in a passive state, but immediately turned from defense to offense. After Beaming Giyu Gyomai finished a set of attacks, he actively approached Beaming Giyu Gyomai and then swung the ghost knife in his hand towards Beaming Giyu Gyomai's neck. Because the axe and meteor hammer of beaming Gyuzingmui had been thrown out and not retracted, and Kokushibo was approaching, beaming Gyuzingmui had no ability to parry, and could only dodge immediately. Beaming Gyuzingmui jumped up, and then flipped over Kokushibo's head like a clever monkey. Kokushibo had also noticed beaming Gyuzingmui's movements. As soon as his attack failed, Kokushibo immediately turned around, and prepared to attack again. Beaming Gyuzingmui, who was in midair, also noticed Kokushibo turning around. Beaming Gyuzingmui, who had retracted the meteor hammer and axe, immediately threw out the axe again. Under beaming Gyuzingmui's control, the iron chain connected to the axe suddenly wrapped around Kokushibo's ghost sword under the drive of the axe, and then the iron chain suddenly tightened, clamping the blade of Kokushibo's ghost sword off. Although the ghost sword was damaged, Kokushibo did not stop his attack, because the broken part of the demon sword grew back in an instant, and the blade also evolved. Breath of the Moon, 8th form, Moon Dragon Tail Swinging. Breath of Rock, 9th form, Rock Buddha protecting the body. As Kokushibo's Moon Dragon Tail Swinging swept out, the meteor hammer and giant axe in beaming Gyuzingming's hands hit the ground at the same time, and the ground was immediately cracked. Then, a 5-meter tall Buddha statue made of rock blocked in front of beaming Gyuzingming. Kokushibo swung out a huge slash with many crescent sword energy like a dragon's tail swinging, and swept towards the huge rock Buddha statue in front of beaming Gyuzingming. When Kokushibo's slash approached the rock Buddha statue, the Buddha statue suddenly turned the palm of one hand towards Kokushibo. Then, Kokushibo's Moon Dragon Tail Swinging was strangely blocked, and did not continue to spread forward. Bang! With a muffled sound, the floor of the entire room cracked and collapsed slightly. Then, a huge energy shock spread out, and the palm of the rock Buddha statue of beaming Gyuzingming was blown up, and the arm of the Buddha statue was directly blown off, and the debris flew. Beaming Gyuzingming was also affected, and a mouthful of blood spurted out of his mouth. Then there was a game of two forces. After 5 or 6 seconds, beaming Gyuzingming's rock Buddha statue completely collapsed, and Kokushibo's slash was almost completely disintegrated. The only remaining slash left a shallow bloody wound on beaming Gyuzingming. Chapter 778, Can't Survive Tonight. Seeing that his Moon Dragon Tail was completely blocked by beaming Gyuzingmui, Kokushibo admired beaming Gyuzingmui even more. Beaming Gyuzingmui, with a human body, took his extremely powerful sweeping slash head on. There is probably no other person in this world who can do this. Of course, that man is an exception, and that man is Bai Yu. At that time, Bai Yu relied on the ghost transformation to take Kokushibo's Moon Dragon Tail with his bare hands on the infinite train. Kokushibo never regarded Bai Yu as a normal human, because Bai Yu's ability has exceeded the scope of a human being. Therefore, Kokushibo now regards Bai Yu as a more advanced species independent of humans and ghosts. Beaming Giyu, you are the first ghost hunter I admire. I admit that you are really powerful, but this time you will not survive by chance like last time. Kokushibo murmured to beaming Gyuzingmui. Gyuzingmui didn't care about what Kokushibo said. He was able to survive in the past, not only because of his own strength, but also because of the help of the former Wind Pillar. If Gyuzingmui had fought Kokushibo one-on-one, he would definitely not be alive now. Even though Gyuzingmui's strength has improved, and his weapon has been strengthened, he knows very well that he has little chance of winning against Kokushibo alone. Although it seems that Gyuzingmui and Kokushibo are evenly matched, in fact, it is Gyuzingmui who has been consumed, not Kokushibo. From the beginning of the attack, Gyuzingmui didn't encounter Kokushibo. Therefore, it was Gyuzingmui who was at a disadvantage. It seems that there is no hope of winning without using that trick. I originally planned to use it against Muzan Kibutsuji, but now I can't care so much. Gyuzingmui couldn't help but mutter in his heart. Activate stripes. The next moment, Gyuzingmui directly activated his own stripes. Then, dark brown markings, similar to a large number of cracks appeared on the arms and face of Yuki. Kokushibo looked at the markings that appeared on Yuki and suddenly remembered something in his heart. He then said, I almost forgot that you can still activate the markings. What a pity. You should be over 25 years old now. So what? Yuki said disapprovingly. Back then, those who had the marks would all die before the age of 25 without exception. Your marks are different from those of the previous batch of us. Your marks are not always visible, so I guess that's why you can live past 25. However, the secret of the marks is actually to increase one's combat power by overdrawing the life of the body. And after you turned 25, you chose to make the marks appear again. I guess you must also know that making the marks appear again is likely to take your life. So, you probably won't see the sun tomorrow. You have this ultimate body, but you are about to leave this world. It's really a pity. Kokushibo said a lot of things with emotion. This is the mission of the pillars, the mission of being a demon hunter. Beaming Gyu Zingmui said with a very firm attitude. Chapter 779. You lied. However, your words made me realize something. You seem to have lied and concealed something from me. Beaming Gyu Zingmui then tried to get Kokushibo to tell him something. Hearing this, Kokushibo was also very confused and asked, what did I lie about? Besides me, there should be exceptions. There are holders of marks who survived past 25 years old. Beaming Gyu Zingmui said. When Beaming Gyu Zingmui said this, Kokushibo was stunned. Looking at Kokushibo's reaction, Beaming Gyu Zingmui felt that he had guessed correctly, so he continued, you are shaken. It seems that my guess is correct. The reason why Beaming Gyu Zingmui made such an inference was completely because he found something fishy from Kokushibo's attitude towards him. If Beaming Gyu Zingmui was the only person Kokushibo knew who had lived past 25 years old after opening marks, then Kokushibo had no reason to be so sure that the holder of marks had lived past 25 years old and to be so indifferent to his own case. It was because of this anomaly that Hamei discovered that Kokushibo was lying. However, as Hamei finished speaking, Kokushibo seemed to be unable to listen anymore and immediately approached Hamei and attacked Hamei. Kokushibo's reaction undoubtedly proved that Hamei was right. Not all of the first group of demon hunters who appeared with marks did not live past 25 years old. Kokushibo must have met one of those who lived past 25 years old after becoming a demon. And the fact is indeed so. This person is none other than Kokushibo's younger brother, the creator of the sun-breathing, Atsuga Kuniyoriichi. Atsuga Kuniyoriichi is the only person who has lived past 25 years old. Atsuga Kuniyoriichi not only lived past 25 years old, but also lived to a very old age. So Kokushibo felt that his brother had deceived him and concealed the method of allowing the holder of marks to live past 25 years old. Therefore, Kokushibo was extremely resentful of Tsuga Kuniyoriichi. After Kokushibo's betrayal, he and Muzan-Kibutsuji stayed silent for a while, intending to drag Tsuga Kuniyoriichi to death. Because at that time, Kokushibo felt that Tsuga Kuniyoriichi would not live past 25, just like those swordsmen. Uneasy, Kokushibo stayed silent for a while longer, and then gradually began to use the intelligence network established by Muzan-Kibutsuji in the early days to pay close attention to the latest movements of the Demon Slayer Corps and the news of Tsuga Kuniyoriichi. However, Kokushibo never got any news about Tsuga Kuniyoriichi, which made Kokushibo more certain that Tsuga Kuniyoriichi had not escaped his fate. At that time, Kokushibo had not completely let go of his concern for Tsukuni, so he would secretly go home at a specific time every year to check the general situation of the family. And on the way home one year, Kokushibo ran into Tsukuni-Yoriichi, who was already white-haired and very old. When he saw Tsukuni-Yoriichi, Kokushibo was extremely shocked, and that kind of shock was even difficult to describe accurately in words. The first thing Tsukikori-Yoriichi said when he saw Kokushibo was, "How pathetic, brother." Faced with Tsukikori-Yoriichi's sigh, Kokushibo naturally didn't feel like paying too much attention, but instead asked his brother why he didn't die and why he lived for so long. However, Tsukikori-Yoriichi didn't answer these questions of Kokushibo, which made Kokushibo feel that Tsukikori-Yoriichi was deliberately holding back, and Kokushibo immediately became furious. Chapter 780. Tsugumi Yuchi's decisive move. Speak. Why don't you answer me? What's your intention? I'm your brother. Why did you lie to me and others, saying that after the marking is activated, no one will live past 25? Why are you still alive? Kokushibo asked his brother Tsukune Yoriichi with great dissatisfaction. Tsukune Yoriichi sighed and said, I didn't lie to you, because my survival was also an accident, and everyone else died. Accident? Everyone, except you, didn't die. You said it was an accident? Kokushibo said sarcastically with unbelief. That's true. In theory, marking is indeed overdrawing life. And I just accidentally practiced the sun breathing to the extreme before the age of 25 and realized the true meaning of breathing, which may be the reason why I can survive. But marking is still a superpower that overdraws life. This cannot be changed. As long as it is used, it will overdraw vitality. Tsukune Yoriichi continued to explain. Do you think that none of us can do what you did? So you are so sure that those who open the mark will not live past 25. You are such a disgusting guy. Kokushibo said with disgust. In Kokushibo's view, Tsukune Yoriichi's explanation was telling him that you rubbish can't be like me. So after the mark appears, none of you will live past 25, and only geniuses like me can be an exception. Of course, Tsukune Yoriichi's original intention was definitely not like this. Just by sharing the sun breathing that he created, it can be seen that he is not a selfish person, but a person full of love. So at that time, Tsukune Yoriichi didn't know that practicing breathing to the extreme and truly understanding the mystery of breathing would greatly weaken the impact of the mark on the body. This was confirmed by him later on himself, which is why Tsukune Yoriichi said that his survival was an accident. Tsukune Yuchi didn't explain anything, but said silently, brother, it's time to end it. I'm happy to see you before I die. After saying that, Tsukune Yuchi suddenly moved, so fast that even Kokushibo couldn't react. Tsukune Yuchi almost teleported in front of Kokushibo, and then swung a knife to cut Kokushibo's neck. But just when the Nichiren sword in Tsukune Yuchi's hand had touched Kokushibo's neck, Tsukune Yuchi suddenly stopped. Kokushibo had already been frightened by Tsukune Yuchi's sudden killing. He didn't expect that Tsukune Yuchi could still have such fighting power at such an old age. Although Kokushibo didn't know why Tsukune Yuchi suddenly stopped, Kokushibo knew that Tsukune Yuchi's attack just now would definitely cut off his neck. Damn it. Are you showing off that, even though you are old, you still have the strength to crush me? Kokushibo immediately distanced himself from Tsukune Yuchi and cursed in his heart with extreme dissatisfaction. Tsujikoku Yoshiichi still maintained the same posture as when he drew his sword, motionless, and did not chase after Kokushibo. After a while, Kokushibo discovered that something was wrong with Tsujikoku Yoshiichi. At this time, Tsujikoku Yoshiichi had lost all his vitality. Kokushibo could no longer feel any vitality in Tsujikoku Yoshiichi's body, as if he was just an empty shell standing there. Chapter 781 Dead. Kokushibo couldn't help but think in his heart. And the fact is indeed so, but even so, Kokushibo is still very angry. Although Tsukune Yoshiichi used up his last life to use a fatal move and failed to kill Kokushibo, Kokushibo knew that from another level, he had been killed by Tsukune Yoshiichi. In Kokushibo's view, Tsukune Yoshiichi's behavior is more of a show-off and a humiliation. Do you have to show off that you are a genius before you die? Do you like to humiliate me in this way, to prove the gap between me and you? Kokushibo shouted at Tsukune Yoshiichi, who was already dead. But in fact, Tsukune Yoshiichi did not have any intention of showing off. The reason why he appeared in front of Kokushibo before he died and used his last vitality to use a blow was completely to kill his brother who had gone astray. Why did Tsukune Yoshiichi want to kill Kokushibo? It was not because he had no feelings for his brother. It was because Tsukune Yuchi was a man full of love. He just didn't want to become a brother of a ghost and hurt other people in this world. The extremely angry Kokushibo couldn't help but cut his brother Tsukune Yuchi's body in half with a knife. A bag on Tsukune Yuchi's waist was also cut in half, as was a bamboo flute inside. The two pieces of bamboo flute flew in the air and then fell to the ground. When Kokushibo saw the bamboo flute on the ground, his childhood memories were suddenly triggered. This was something he gave to Tsukuni Yuchi when he was young. Kokushibo didn't expect that Tsukuni Yuchi had been carrying it with him. Although Tsukuni Yuchi was really dead, Tsukuni Yuchi gained eternal life in Kokushibo's heart after this time. When facing Kokushibo's attack, Jayamui beaming Giyu, who opened the stripes again, blocked it more easily. Then, Jayamui beaming Giyu and Kokushibo fought fiercely again. Rock breathing, 4 type, meteor sweeping the moon. Moon breathing, land type, long night lonely moon no space. Rock breathing, 4 type, meteor sweeping the moon. This move was specially improved and optimized by Jayamui to deal with Kokushibo, and it has a certain restraint on Kokushibo's attack routine. The meteor hammer in Jayamui's hand was under his control, and it kept colliding with Kokushibo's ghost sword. After Stripes was turned on, Jayamui's meteor hammer was heavier than a sword weapon, but under the control of Jayamui's body, it did not feel heavy at all. With the opening of Stripes, Jayamui's meteor hammer was really like a meteor, which could sweep away all attacks in front of it. Seeing that his attack was understood by beaming Giyu Zingmui, Kokushibo was a little surprised, and then he said to beaming Giyu Zingmui, "It seems that you have done a deep study on me after that battle. Knowing yourself and knowing your enemy, you can defeat you better." Beaming Giyu Zingmui replied indifferently. Then, Kokushibo took the initiative to distance himself from beaming Giyu Zingmui. But in the contact between Kokushibo and beaming Giyu Zingmui just now, beaming Giyu Zingmui's attack tore the air. The tornado directly tore Kokushibo's clothes into pieces and tore Kokushibo's skin. If you're listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means they downloaded and uploaded it without effort. We cordially invite you to visit our channel, Mundo Fanfic Novelos. There you'll find the original version of this story and you can explore many other novels of various genres. We're waiting for you to immerse yourself in a world of incredible novels. Chapter 782, Getting Serious. Seeing that the attack of beaming Giyu Jayamui not only countered his own attack, but also the aftershock of the attack tore the air and tore his skin, Kokushibo's admiration for beaming Giyu Jayamui grew stronger. If Kokushibo and beaming Giyu Jayamui were both human, then it could be said that Kokushibo had already lost. However, the skin tear was quickly repaired by Kokushibo's regenerative recovery ability. It seems that this level of moves can no longer have much effect on you, Kokushibo said, and swung the ghost sword in his right hand horizontally to the side. Then the ghost sword began to grow longer, as if it had life, and some branches grew out. Seeing Kokushibo's posture, beaming Giyu Jayamui knew that Kokushibo was going to show his true strength. Breath of the Moon, 8th form, Moon Dragon Tail Swing. Kokushibo directly used Moon Dragon Tail Swing to sweep towards beaming Giyu Zingmui. Beaming Giyu Zingmui did not choose to take it hard this time, because the distance this time was much farther than the last time, and beaming Giyu Zingmui had activated Spotted Pattern again, and all aspects of his own attributes were improved, so beaming Giyu Zingmui was able to dodge this move. Beaming Giyu Zingmui jumped directly into the sky and dodged Kokushibo's Moon Dragon Tail Swing. Kokushibo was not too surprised that beaming Giyu Zingmui jumped into the sky to avoid his attack, but immediately changed his moves and swung his sword into the air again. Breath of the Moon, 9th form, Moon Falling Face Up. Kokushibo swung and slashed at the air in a staggered and dense manner. As the demon sword in Kokushibo's hand swung, many giant crescent blades, mixed with many small crescent blades rotating at high speed, slashed towards the air. The interlaced slashes blocked many of beaming Giyu Zingmui's escape spaces. Rock breathing, Form 8, New Buddha Ascension. As New Buddha Ascension was activated, long stone pillars suddenly sprang up from the ground. Beaming Giyu Zingmui used the rising stone pillars as footholds, twisted his body, and swung the meteor hammer to avoid Kokushibo's falling Moon Lionman in the gap. If it weren't for this move, beaming Giyu Zingmui, who was suspended in the air, would definitely be hit by Kokushibo's slashes. Even if beaming Giyu Zingmui activated Rock Body Skin, he couldn't block Kokushibo's powerful attack, and Rock Buddha Body Protection had to touch the ground with both feet, and then use the meteor hammer to break to activate it. It was impossible to invite the Rock Buddha out while suspended in the air. Although beaming Gai Xingming successfully avoided the huge and dense slashes with the help of the rising stone pillars, there was no way for beaming Gai Xingming to completely dodge the numerous and high-speed rotating small crescent blades covering the surface of the huge slashes. This was mainly due to his own sturdy physique. If it was a petite physique like Kocho Shinobu, he might be able to avoid being rubbed by those small crescents. The dense and fast rotating small crescent blades cut hundreds of bloody wounds on beaming Gai Xingming's body. Although the bloody wounds were not fatal and did not cut the aorta, the number was too large, so the instantaneous amount of bleeding was also very large. Then, beaming Gai Xingming's figure fell back to the ground. At the moment beaming Gai Xingming touched the ground was impacted by beaming Gai Xingming's body weight and cracked immediately. Chapter 783 Kill Me. At this time, a lot of blood was constantly flowing out of the wounds on beaming Gai Xingming's body. Beaming Gai Xingming immediately used his breathing to stop the bleeding. Although this injury was not fatal to beaming Gai Xingming, it affected beaming Gai Xingming's rhythm. Just when beaming Gai Xingming had just stopped the bleeding, Takito Muchiro, who suddenly woke up, suddenly rushed towards beaming Gai Xingming, but was grabbed by the neck by beaming Gai Xingming, who activated Spotted. But before beaming Gai Xingming could do anything to Takito Muchiro, Kokushibo's attack was released towards beaming Gai Xingming again. Moon breathing, pickup form, piercing face / low Yu. Two huge swelling sword ki swept across the ground, sweeping out two cracks on the ground, and the cracks continued to increase in length as the swirling sword ki moved. Rock breathing, pickup form, 10,000 mountains block 1,000 armies. Immediately, beaming Gai Xingming stomped his feet on the ground, and in front of him, thick rock walls rose from the ground. Dong 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 dong, the sound of rock walls breaking from the ground continued to ring out. Although the name of beaming Gai Xingming's move is 10,000 mountains block 1,000 armies, it is actually impossible to raise 10,000 rock walls. In reality, beaming Gai Xingming only raised 10 rock walls to block Kokushibo's attack. However, Kokushibo's attack power is very terrifying, and those raised rock walls did not completely block Kokushibo's attack. When the two huge rotating full moon shaped sword energy hit the rock wall, they directly shattered the rock wall, and then continued to move in the direction it should move. The rock walls were constantly destroyed by the two huge full moon shaped sword ki. Although the rock walls created by beaming Gai Xingming using the breath of rock looked fragile and could not stop the two spinning slashes of Kokushibo. In fact, the power of Kokushibo's slash was greatly weakened every time it broke a rock wall. In other words, the move, 10,000 mountains blocking thousands of troops, was not used to forcibly block Kokushibo's attack, but was mainly used to weaken Kokushibo's attack. When the two giant sword ki hit the fifth rock wall, it was already possible to intuitively feel that the power of the sword ki had weakened a lot, and the advancement speed had also slowed down. Kill me. And Shitao Muchiro, who was strangled by beaming Gai Xingming, asked beaming Gai Xingming with great difficulty. Hearing this, beaming Gai Xingming looked at Shitao Muchiro. From Shitao Muchiro's words of actively seeking death, beaming Gai Xingming knew that Shitao Muchiro did not voluntarily become a ghost. However, now is not the time to consider this. What beaming Gai Xingming has to consider now is whether to kill Shitao Muchiro or not. Do it. Quickly. Shitao Muchiro, who had just regained a trace of rationality by the feeling of suffocation, urged again. Beaming Gai Xingming also knew that, if he hesitated any longer, there would be no time. With Shitao Muchiro losing his rational state, he would definitely become a very powerful troublemaker that would affect the battle between beaming Gai Xingming and Kokushibo. Although the description is a bit vulgar, this is the situation. If he does not kill Shitao Muchiro, under Shitao Muchiro's interference, beaming Gai Xingming will not only fail to kill Kokushibo, but will be more likely to be killed by Kokushibo. Then, beaming Gai Xingming was filled with hatred and threw Shitao Muchiro heavily to the ground, then chopped Shitao Muchiro with an axe, and finally cut off Shitao Muchiro's neck. Chapter 784, Kokushibo's question. At the same time, Kokushibo's attack had already broken the 10th rock wall and swept towards beaming Gai Xingming. At this time, beaming Gai Xingming had no time to dodge or attack and was directly swept away by the sword energy. Fortunately, when beaming Gyu Zingmo's sword energy swept him, the iron chain connecting the axe and the meteor hammer played a buffering role. In addition, the 10 rock walls weakened Kokushibo's attack, and the power of the attack on beaming Gyu Zingmo was greatly weakened. In the end, only 2 deep bloody wounds were left on beaming Gyu Zingmo's chest. The wound was located in the chest cavity, and the ribs and strong muscles buffered the attack again, so Kokushibo's 2 huge sword energies did not pass through beaming Gyu Zingmo's body. If they passed through beaming Gyu Zingmo's body, beaming Gyu Zingmo would be dead. The moment Takito Muchiro's neck was cut off, a look of relief appeared on his face. Then, Takito Muchiro's body began to collapse rapidly. Because Takito Muchiro did not have a strong desire to survive, he could not regenerate his head like Akaza and Dauma. Kokushibo looked at Takito Muchiro, who was dissipating, and was actually a little dissatisfied in his heart. Kokushibo did not want to see this situation. He wanted to see Takito Muchiro willingly join his side and then be reborn as a ghost. What a disobedient child. Kokushibo murmured, and beaming Gyu Zingmo covered his chest. His condition was not very good. It would take at least a few seconds to adjust his condition back. You feel the fragility of the human body. As long as you get a little hurt, your condition will be affected. Kokushibo said as he looked at beaming Gyu Zingmo, who was buffering his injuries. Fushiguro Jinmiya, who was kicked away by Kokushibo before, was hiding behind a building ruin. He also wanted to join the battle, but beaming Gyu Zingmo and Kokushibo were too powerful. Fushiguro Jinmiya, who had transformed into a ghost, could not keep up with their fighting rhythm. Fushiguro Zuanaya is also very clear that, even if he has the chance to get close to Kokushibo, he will definitely be killed by Kokushibo. The most important thing is that blindly intervening in a battle with unequal strength will affect beaming Gyu Zingmo. If Kokushibo grabs Fushiguro Zuanaya as a hostage to threaten beaming Gyu Zingmo, then Fushiguro Zuanaya will be a sinner. Therefore, Fushiguro Zuanaya hiding is not cowardly, but his strength is completely unable to help beaming Gyu Zingmo. Becoming a monster that cannot see the sun and must eat people to survive. Is this what you pursue? Beaming Gyu Zingmo saw that Kokushibo stopped attacking, so he chose to take the initiative to talk to Kokushibo. The main purpose of this is naturally to ease his injuries and then adjust his state back. Although the Ghost's body is not perfect yet, Ghost has the ability to evolve beyond humans. Didn't Tanjiro's sister Nezuko overcome the sunlight? So it is only a matter of time for Ghost to overcome the sunlight. As for eating people, that's nothing. This world is a world where people eat each other. Even if there are no ghosts, wouldn't there be less life and death struggles between people? Are all humans good? Kokushibo couldn't help but satirize this dirty world and questioned Jimoihii. Chapter 785, The Past of Xingming on Beaming Island. Facing the questioning of Kokushibo, beaming Gyu Zingmo knew that what Kokushibo said was indeed reasonable, and the world itself has two sides. Beaming Gyu Zingmo also agreed with what Kokushibo said, that not all humans are good. Because beaming Gyu Zingmo had been hurt by humans, what Kokushibo said did evoke the negative emotions in beaming Gyu Zingmo's heart. At the beginning, beaming Gyu Zingmo was still a monk in a temple. He took in a group of orphans in the temple out of kindness and regarded these children as his own family. However, a child sneaked into beaming Gyu Zingmo's temple at night in order to get rid of the bad guys behind him and blew out the candles that beaming Gyu Zingmo lit in the temple that could release the scent of wisteria. But the one following the child was not a monster, but a ghost. The child blew out the candles with the scent of wisteria that had the ability to drive away ghosts, which undoubtedly helped ghosts open the door to the temple. After ghosts entered the temple, they first followed the smell to find the hiding child, and then the child was ruthlessly killed by ghosts. The screams woke up beaming Gyu Zingming and the children adopted by beaming Gyu Zingming in the room. Because it was dark and beaming Gyu Zingming was blind, beaming Gyu Zingming did not take the initiative to check the situation, but comforted the children, asked them to calm down and hide. But the children were frightened by the screams of the child and thought that bad people had entered the temple, so they were very scared. The children did not believe that hiding would save their lives, and they did not believe that beaming Gyu Zingming, who was weak and blind at the time, could protect them. so the children wanted to escape from the room one after another. Only one girl listened to beaming Gaiyu Xingming and hid. Those children who ran away without permission and ran out of the room first were killed by the ghost outside the room. The screams one after another made the children's spirits completely collapse. Some of them were even too scared to run out of the room again and just stood there in a daze. Soon the ghost entered the room and killed the children in the room. In the darkness and extreme chaos, the children were running around, and the various panicked footsteps, screams, and sounds of things breaking all affected beaming Gaiyu Xingming's judgment. Because beaming Gaiyu Xingming was blind, he often relied on sound to identify the location of the person. The overly chaotic situation made beaming Gaiyu Xingming lose any hope of judgment. He could only keep turning around and couldn't do anything until the screams and footsteps of the children disappeared. Coupled with the blood in the room, beaming Gaiyu Xingming's heart suddenly turned cold. Soon, beaming Gaiyu Xingming heard chewing sounds, and at this moment, beaming Gaiyu Xingming was even more certain that the ghost attacked the temple. The angry beaming Gaiyu Xingming immediately rushed in the direction of the sound, and then wrestled with the ghost. Although beaming Gaiyu Xingming was still very young at the time and his physique was not as burly as it is now, it was also due to his height. In fact, beaming Gaiyu Xingming was much stronger than ordinary people. The ghost was just an ordinary ghost, so it was unable to withstand the headshot attack launched by the angry beaming Gaiyu Xingming. In the end, it could only become a sandbag, being hit on the head by beaming Gaiyu Xingming's fists. Chapter 786. So that's what you think. After a few punches from beaming Gaiyu Xingming, the ghost's head was smashed by beaming Gaiyu Xingming, leaving the ghost no room for resistance. Although the ghost has the ability to regenerate, this ghost is not a very powerful ghost, so his ability to regenerate is not strong, and he can't keep up with the damage caused by beaming Gaiyu Xingming. However, the ghost was not killed by beaming Gaiyu Xingming, and beaming Gaiyu Xingming also knew that the ghost would only be killed by sunlight, so beaming Gaiyu Xingming did not stop attacking, but continued to beat the ghost's head like a machine, and this process lasted until dawn. The sunlight shone into the room, which killed the ghost. The only little girl who listened to beaming Gaiyu Xingming's words hid in a bamboo basket. She was lucky to escape, but she also became mentally ill. Soon, adults came to the temple to burn incense. Then, in this situation, the mentally ill little girl accused Gyomai Beaming as the creator of this nightmare, but the real murderer had already turned to dust. No matter how Gyomai Beaming explained, the adults only believed the little girl's words, because they believed that children would not lie. After that, Gyomai Beaming was accused of murder, and was almost executed. In the end, it was the Demon Slayer Corps chief, Yaiba Uzumaki, who rescued Gyomai Beaming, and Gyomai Beaming joined the Demon Slayer Corps. This was Gyomai Beaming's darkest past, and this incident made Gyomai Beaming no longer have any good feelings towards children. If Gyomai Beaming had met Muzan Kibutsuji at that time, perhaps Gyomai Beaming would not have become a demon hunter, but a powerful demon. It was because when the Demon Slayer Corps leader Yubuayashiki Yoya began to hate humans on Gyomai of Sadamasuma, it was Yubuayashiki Yoya who gave Gyomai of Sadamasuma the correct guidance and pulled him back to the light from the endless abyss. When Kokushibo saw that Gyomai of Sadamasuma was silent, he knew that his words might have touched Gyomai of Sadamasuma's heart, so he said again, "It seems that you think the same as me. Compared to demons, I feel that you seem to hate humans more. In this case, why do you want to become a demon hunter? Isn't it good to join us? If you don't want to become a demon, just because you don't want to eat people, then you can choose to eat the scum among humans, those bad people who are human but do evil." Kokushibo struck while the iron was hot, and began to fool Gyomai of Sadamasuma. It can be said that Kokushibo was right. Compared with demons, Gyomai of Sadamasuma hated humans more. Because Gyomai of Sadamasuma was not deprived of the most important things in his life by demons, but it was people who trampled on Gyomai of Sadamasuma's heart. However, in the end, Gyomai Beaming Gaiyu still did not accept Kokushibo's proposal, but replied, "Although people are divided into good and evil, human life is limited. Even if the evil are dealt with in time, they will still die one day. And if the evil ghosts are not eradicated, the ghosts with eternal life will continue to eat people and do evil." Therefore, the evil ghosts must be eradicated by external forces. Even if I become a ghost, I will still be opposed to you because you are carrying too many sins. You must also be eradicated. Hearing this, Kokushibo realized that this is what Gyomai Beaming Giyu thought. So that's what you think? Then I can only kill you. Kokushibo also lost the idea of winning over Gyomai Beaming Giyu. Chapter 787 The Bound Black Death. Breath of the Moon, 7th form, Mirror of Evil Moon Eyes. Kokushibo swept forward from bottom to top, and 7 sword ki appeared on the ground and swept over. Breath of the Rock, 8th form, New Buddha Ascension. At the same time, Gyomai used the stone pillars rising from the ground to approach Kokushibo from midair, thus completely avoiding the sword ki on the ground. After getting close to Kokushibo for a distance, Gyomai threw out the meteor hammer. Kokushibo jumped back, and the meteor hammer hit the place where he was standing before, and a pit was immediately smashed out on the ground, and gravel flew. Breath of the Moon, 9th form, Moon Falling Lineman. Kokushibo, who jumped back and stood still, immediately waved the ghost sword in his hand that was about 3 or 4 meters long after evolution, and swept towards Gyomai with staggered slashes accompanied by huge sword ki. Gyomai controlled the length of the stone pillar and returned to the ground in an instant. At the moment when Beaming Giyu Zingmei returned to the ground, Kokushibo was already prepared and immediately threw out a Moon Dragon Tail Swing. Kokushibo's timing was very good. It was impossible for Beaming Giyu Zingmei to send himself into the air through the stone pillar, and there was not enough time. Rock Breathing, 9 forms, Rock Buddha Body Protection. Beaming Giyu Zingmei could only raise his fist and smash it hard on the ground. Immediately, a 3 or 4 meter high Rock Buddha statue appeared in front of Beaming Giyu Zingmei. Then, Beaming Giyu Zingmei immediately stretched out a palm forward, and the Rock Buddha statue also stretched out a palm forward in synchronization with Beaming Giyu Zingmei's movements. Suddenly, a wave of energy vibration spread out in all directions. Moon Breathing, 10 4 forms, Fierce Change 10 Full Slim Moon. Kokushibo was waiting for Beaming Giyu Zingmei to use a Rock Buddha Body Protection move. At the moment when Moon Dragon Tail Swing was thrown out, Kokushibo immediately turned his body and slashed the ghost sword in his hand wildly around. Suddenly, countless sword ki swept all around. Although this time, Beaming Giyu Zingmei's Rock Buddha Bodyguard blocked Kokushibo's Moon Dragon Tail Swinging. The dangerous change, full moon, that followed became the straw that broke the camel's back for the Rock Buddha statue. The Rock Buddha statue was destroyed into rubble by the dense and huge sword ki. Just when those sword ki were about to hit Beaming Giyu Zingmei, Beaming Giyu Zingmei stomped his feet fiercely and urgently used 10,000 mountains blocking thousands of troops. But because it was an emergency, this time, 10,000 mountains blocking thousands of troops only produced 1 rock wall, not 10 rock walls. At the same time, Beaming Giyu Zingmei's left hand suddenly pulled the iron chain connected to the meteor hammer. The meteor hammer not far in front of Kokushibo suddenly jumped under the drive of the iron chain, and then under Beaming Giyu Zingmei's control, it suddenly entangled Kokushibo's neck tightly. Kokushibo's attack was stopped immediately, but the slash that Kokushibo had already swung still destroyed the rock wall in front of Beaming Giyu Zingmei, and then swept Beaming Giyu Zingmei away. Because Beaming Giyu Zingmei was holding the iron chain tightly in his hand, and the other end of the iron chain was wrapped around Kokushibo's neck, Kokushibo was pulled out along with the iron chain before he could break free. Beaming Giyu Zingmei knew that this was a very good opportunity, so he climbed up suddenly regardless of the injury on his chest, and then immediately controlled the iron chain in his hand to tightly wrap Kokushibo's whole body. Chapter 788, Black Death Beheaded. Kokushibo knew that the situation was not right, and immediately tried to break free from the chain. However, Kokushibo found that the chain was unusually strong, and it could not be broken instantly to break free. This was the opposite of the situation back then. Back then, Gyomai used the same trick to control Kokushibo, but Kokushibo instantly broke the chain, which was one of the reasons why Gyomai was defeated that year. This time, the reason why Kokushibo failed to break the chain was because Jayamui deliberately rebuilt the chain after the battle in which he was defeated that year, using the top materials and the top forging craftsmanship. When Kokushibo saw that he could not break the chain, he had already guessed what was going on. However, Kokushibo was not completely unable to break the chain, it just took some time. As Kokushibo's veins bulged, the chain did not break, but began to deform. Seeing this, Jayamui immediately smashed his hands to the ground. Rock breathing, Form 11, rock ceiling kill. Instantly, the ground around Kokushibo seemed to have life, and suddenly wrapped Kokushibo tightly, leaving only his head exposed. Rock ceiling kill was also specially developed by beaming Gai using Mui to deal with Kokushibo. When Kokushibo saw that he was being controlled tightly, he suddenly felt bad. This boat capsized in the gutter was not what Kokushibo wanted to see. Beaming Gai using Mui, who applied the second layer of seal, immediately drew out a short blade from his waist. This short blade was also made of the material used to make the Nichiren sword, so it also had the ability to kill ghosts. This was also prepared by beaming Gai using Mui for emergency situations. From beaming Gai using Mui sufficient preparation, it can be seen that beaming Gai using Mui is a person who is good at summarizing lessons and taking timely countermeasures. Beaming Gai using Mui, who drew out the short blade, immediately approached Kokushibo, and when he successfully approached Kokushibo, he swung the short blade heavily at Kokushibo's exposed neck. Under the swing of Jayamui, the short blade successfully broke through Kokushibo's neck, but at the same time Kokushibo also forcibly broke free from Jayamui's control. However, Kokushibo was still a step too late. Although he broke free from the control, Kokushibo's neck had been completely cut off by Jayamui. Then, Kokushibo's head rolled to the ground, and then he looked at Jayamui, who was half kneeling on the ground because of his serious injuries. Because Jayamui was still operating his body at a high load despite his injuries, as Jayamui successfully cut off Kokushibo's neck, Jayamui suddenly felt relieved, just like a balloon leaking air, starting to leak air, until it was completely deflated. In addition, Kokushibo had said before that Jayamui, who was over 25 years old, would not survive tonight if he activated the marking again. In other words, although Jayamui took advantage of the victory and successfully cut off Kokushibo's neck, Jayamui's situation was not optimistic. Because he was hit in the chest twice by Kokushibo's attack, this time, beaming Gai Jayamui was not so lucky. Kokushibo's dreadful transformation, Tenman Slim Moon, this time hurt beaming Gai Jayamui's liver. If it were an ordinary person, he would have died. Beaming Gai Jayamui was able to attack twice in a row despite such a fatal injury. If you're listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means they downloaded and uploaded it without effort. We cordially invite you to visit our channel, Mundo Fanfic Novelos. There you'll find the original version of this story and you can explore many other novels of various genres. We're waiting for you to immerse yourself in a world of incredible novels. Chapter 789, Reversal of Situation. The fact that Jayamui beaming Gai was able to cut off Kokushibo's neck despite his fatal injury is enough to show that Jayamui beaming Gai is very powerful. He is recognized as the strongest among the 9 pillars, and this is not an empty statement. After all, he can still win a narrow victory in a 1v1 duel with Kokushibo, or even die together. This is the best proof of Jayamui beaming Gai's strength. Although Jayamui beaming Gai's narrow victory this time has a lot to do with his full preparation, it still cannot be separated from Jayamui beaming Gai's own hard power. Of course, Jayamui beaming Gai could have chosen to defend further at that time, instead of taking the opportunity to wrap the iron chain around Kokushibo's neck. Because Kokushibo's attack at that time was very likely to kill Jayamui beaming Giyu, and of course the real thing was indeed so. Kokushibo's attack damaged Jayamui beaming Gai's liver, which was indeed a fatal blow to Jayamui beaming Giyu. Although Jayamui beaming Giyu finally cut off Kokushibo's neck despite his injury, in fact, Jayamui beaming Giyu, who was attacked first, was actually killed by Kokushibo. The subsequent attacks were actually just a counter-attack by beaming Gai using Mui before his death. Therefore, beaming Gai using Mui's choice was actually a gamble, but it was indeed the best opportunity for beaming Gai using Mui to find a counter-attack. If Beamingaiu Zingmei had continued to defend at that time, he would only be consumed by Kokushibo again. For the disadvantaged party, if you want to win, you have to dare to take risks. After all, fighting a war of attrition with a ghost is the most idiotic behavior. Beamingaiu Zingmei, who was half squatting, soon vomited a lot of blood. At this time, Fushiguro Zuanmaya, who was hiding aside, saw Kokushibo's head fall to the ground, and his heart was also extremely shocked. Fushiguro Zuanmaya couldn't believe his eyes. However, when seeing Beamingaiu Zingmei vomiting blood, Fushiguro Zuanmaya finally rushed out, and then came to Beamingaiu Zingmei, and asked with concern, "Teacher, what's wrong with you? Are you okay?" Looking at Fushiguro Zuanmaya who appeared in front of him, Beamingaiu Zingmei couldn't help but shout. Beamingaiu Zingmei was very clear about his current situation. His liver was damaged, and it was useless, even if the bleeding was stopped. Beamingaiu Zingmei knew that he would die in a while. Although he killed Kokushibo, Beamingaiu Zingmei still felt a little sorry, because he had no chance to kill Muzan Kibutsuji again. Compared with Kokushibo's death, Beamingaiu Zingmei would rather see Muzan Kibutsuji's miserable death. Raw with raw, Kokushibo's chopped off head instantly regenerated. However, the new head that Kokushibo regenerated was even less like a human. In addition to the 6 eyes, Kokushibo had no lips, and his fangs protruded outward. At the same time, 2 twisted, asymmetrical, and different sized sharp horns grew on his head. This sudden change scared both Beamingaiu Zingmei and Fushiguro Zuanmaya. The most surprised one was Beamingaiu Zingmei. Hahaha, I have overcome decapitation like adults. As long as I overcome sunlight, I will be a perfect species. Kokushibo suddenly laughed crazily. Go. Beamingaiu Zingmei pushed Fushiguro Zuanmaya away, and drove him away. Beamingaiu Zingmei did not expect that Kokushibo would also overcome decapitation like Muzan Kibutsuji, so the situation was completely reversed. Chapter 790 Defeat. Faced with a reversal of the situation, at this time, Beamingaiu Zingmei was already willing, but not strong enough. The fatal injury could no longer support Beamingaiu Zingmei to continue fighting with Kokushibo. Fushiguro Zuanmaya was pushed to the ground, but Fushiguro Zuanmaya still did not get up and run away immediately. Instead, he looked at Kokushibo in horror, as if he had been frightened by Kokushibo's regenerated head. Beamingaiu Zingmei forced his body to stand up, and then still swung the short blade in his hand towards Kokushibo's neck. However, this time, Kokushibo grabbed Beamingaiu Zingmei's wrist tightly, and then broke Beamingaiu Zingmei's hand without any hesitation. Because of the fatal injury, Beamingaiu Zingmei's movements were no longer as fast as when he was in full state. Even if there was, Kokushibo, who was not bound, could still dodge or block Beamingaiu Zingmei's attack. Even if he was chopped, Kokushibo didn't have to worry, because he had overcome decapitation. If it weren't for Kokushibo's unyielding will that helped him overcome the beheading, he would have really been defeated by Zingmei. So, Kokushibo is very upset now. Although Zingmei's arm was broken, he didn't scream, but his face looked very ugly. Kokushibo looked at Zingmei coldly. Kokushibo knew exactly what Zingmei was like now. Even if he didn't overcome the beheading, Zingmei wouldn't be able to live much longer. You're going to die. You're still making so many small moves. Kokushibo said in an extremely cold tone. After that, Kokushibo snatched the short blade from Zingmei's hand, and then used Zingmei's short blade to kill Zingmei. The way he was killed was the same way Zingmei had just killed Kokushibo. For humans, such an injury would definitely kill them. When Fushiguro Zuanmaya saw this scene, his mind went blank. He didn't even dare, and didn't want to believe, that what he saw was true. The scene was so horrifying, that it even made people feel uncomfortable. Beamingaiu Zingmei was killed by the beheaded Kokushibo. There was no room for resistance. He could fight Kokushibo just now, but in the blink of an eye, he became a slaughtered fish. Why didn't Kokushibo die? Exclamation mark. He was the one who deserved to die the most. Beamingaiu Zingmei had obviously cut off his head. Why did he grow a new head? Exclamation mark. Even if Beamingaiu Zingmei had died a long time ago, at least he would die with Kokushibo. At least die later than Kokushibo. At least die more decently. But now Beamingaiu Zingmei's death was too tragic. This was what Fushiguro Zuanmaya thought in his heart. However, even so, beaming guy using Mo's headless body still remained standing. After getting rid of Jayamui Hiramu, Kokushibo looked at Fushiguro Genai and said calmly, I originally planned to make you the food of Tokito Muchiro, but unfortunately Tokito Muchiro is not good enough, so now you have no value. After that, Fushiguro Genai also died in Kokushibo's hands. Jayamui Hiramu, Tokito Muchiro and Fushiguro Genai died in Kokushibo's hands. Chapter 791 Meeting Again. It can be said that the defeat and death of Jayamui Hirame and Muchiro Tokito did have a subtle impact on the overall situation. If Jayamui Hirame had not died, he would have been a great help in dealing with Muzan Kibutsuji. The current situation of the 9 pillars is that Jayamui Hirame and Muchiro Tokito have died, and Shinobu Kocho and Giyu Tomioka have been seriously injured, and it is unlikely that they will continue to participate in the next battle with Muzan Kibutsuji. Ringoku Kyojiro, Tenjin Yuzu, and Sane Fushiguro are also unable to participate in the frontal battle because their combat power has not been fully restored. And Mitsuri Kanroji and Abane Iguro are on standby in a state of fake death according to Yashiro's arrangement. Now it seems that the only 4 people who can deal with Muzan Kibutsuji in the future are Shiraha, Mitsuri Kanroji, Abane Iguro, and Tanjiro who is in poor condition. As for Agatsuma Zenitsu, Inosuke, Kaneo, and Hattori Kyujo, they were also seriously injured, so it is unlikely that they will come to help deal with Muzan Kibutsuji. As for the other team members, there is no need to consider it at all. If they go to Muzan Kibutsuji, it will be a complete act of suicide. What they can do is to deal with those deformed ghosts that were temporarily mass-produced by Muzan Kibutsuji, and to protect the safety of the hidden personnel of the Demon Slayer Corps. After Kokushibo got rid of everyone, he looked at the body of Jayamui Sadomasuke. Although Kokushibo didn't feel hungry now, he still consumed energy when fighting with Jayamui Sadomasuke. In addition, Jayamui Sadomasuke's body has been trained to the extreme. Such a body is also a tonic for ghosts, which is similar to thin blood, so Kokushibo had the idea of eating Jayamui Sadomasuke. Then, there was a chewing sound, and Kokushibo began to gnaw on Jayamui Sadomasuke's body. While Kokushibo was eating, Bai Yu, instructed by the crow, rushed to where Kokushibo was. Bai Yu's arrival forced Kokushibo to stop eating. Bai Yu looked at the ruined and messy scene around him, and knew that a very fierce battle had taken place here. Since Kokushibo was still alive, it was obvious that Kokushibo was the winner of this battle. Soon Bai Yu saw the head of beaming Gayu Jayomui in the body that was partially eaten by Kokushibo. There was also a lot of blood on the ground, which was obviously flowing from the aorta in beaming Gayu Jayomui's neck. When Bai Yu saw this, he roughly knew what was going on. Then, Bai Yu saw the head and body of Fushiguro Zuanaya. Fushiguro Zuanaya's body was still intact, obviously not eaten by Kokushibo. Bai Yu's sight did not linger too much on the death of beaming Gayu Jayomui and Fushiguro Zuanaya, but shifted his sight to Kokushibo. When he saw Kokushibo again, Bai Yu was also surprised by Kokushibo's new appearance. If it weren't for the 6 eyes and the sword on his waist, Bai Yu really wouldn't recognize that the ugly guy in front of him was Kokushibo. However, Bai Yu didn't know why Kokushibo had become like this. Maybe this was his original appearance after becoming a ghost. It's you. Didn't Mingnu trap you? Kokushibo was also quite surprised to see Bai Yu. According to the plan, Bai Yu should have been trapped by Mingnu. Chapter 792 Praise. Do you think that little trick can really trap me? Bai Yu said indifferently. Hearing this, Kokushibo did not refute, and tacitly agreed with Bai Yu's words. Bai Yu really could not be viewed with common sense. But now Kokushibo is not as wary of Bai Yu as before, because now Kokushibo has overcome decapitation, so he does not have to worry about Bai Yu killing him by decapitation. In other words, even if Kokushibo cannot beat Bai Yu, he now has the ability to hold Bai Yu back. Although Kokushibo learned from the dead Dauma through the intelligence sharing of Ghost that Bai Yu still has a method similar to sunlight to exterminate them. This was the last information reported by Dauma before his death, so Kokushibo knew that Bai Yu still had a way to kill him. Therefore, Kokushibo did not take the initiative to attack, but chose to hold Bai Yu back. New mission release. Mission. Kill Kokushibo. Mission completion reward. Obtain earth breathing. Final secret. Mission incomplete penalty. None. At this time, the broadcast of the super dimension crossing system sounded in Bai Yu's mind. When he received this mission, Bai Yu was sure that the system was going to let him master the 5-element breathing method of gold, wood, water, fire, and earth. Although the breath of flame is not called the breath of fire, it is essentially a fire attribute, so Bai Yu thinks it is just a naming problem. However, Bai Yu did not immediately start the demonization to deal with Kokushibo after receiving the mission, because Bai Yu also knew that Kokushibo must be fighting on the principle of dragging himself, and the demonization is not suitable for a protracted war. If the power of the demon is used up, the situation will not be very good. Although the rampaging Bai Yu can definitely kill Kokushibo, now is not the time to run away. Flame breathing, 9 type, Purgatory Meteor. Bai Yu did not drag it out, and took the initiative to attack directly, launching Purgatory Meteor to force Kokushibo. Breath of the Moon, form of 4, Moon Shadow Flash. And Kokushibo was not at all lazy. Seeing Bai Yu's active attack, he immediately used a move to parry. Facing the oncoming Bai Yu, Kokushibo chose to use Moon Shadow Flash, which is also a flash attack, to deal with it. In an instant, when Bai Yu and Kokushibo crossed each other, brilliant sparks splashed out, and then the two of them switched positions. Bai Yu, who was standing still, was still burning with flames all over his body. Similarly, Kokushibo's body was also burning with flames. The flames on Kokushibo were drawn by Bai Yu, which was harmful to Kokushibo. At the same time, the temperature around him became extremely hot because of Bai Yu's moves. Kokushibo immediately twisted his body and turned around, and by waving the ghost sword in his hand, he temporarily isolated the air around him. Without oxygen, the flames on Kokushibo's body quickly went out. However, Bai Yu's flames had already caused relatively serious burns to Kokushibo in a very short time. Although Kokushibo extinguished the flames, his body was already severely burned. In the previous confrontation, neither Bai Yu nor Kokushibo had a direct hit on the other, but because Bai Yu took advantage of his moves, he still caused a certain degree of damage to Kokushibo. You are proficient in more than one breathing method. To be honest, you may be a more talented person than my brother, Kokushibo murmured to Bai Yu. Chapter 793 Breaking the Move. Bai Yu ignored Kokushibo's praise and launched another attack. Water breathing. Form 11. Water Shadow Slash. Facing Bai Yu's Water Shadow Slash, Kokushibo was shocked and immediately turned around to attack. Moon breathing. Form 14. Fierce Change Skyfall Slim Moon. If Kokushibo hadn't sensed the fluctuations in the air with the help of the domain of the transparent world, Kokushibo would not have known that Bai Yu had launched a move to attack. The sword energy attack of Water Shadow Slash is not like the traditional sword energy attack, which starts from the position where the opponent is located. The sword energy of Water Shadow Slash appears directly on the opponent. Kokushibo's reaction is also very fast, and he directly launched a range attack with great lethality. Bai Yu did not choose to dodge, but chose to use Water Breathing, Form 1 Reformed, Water Surface Slash Chain Slash, to counter the huge and dense sword energy slashed by Kokushibo. And Kokushibo had already made up his mind, and he had been maintaining the release state of Fierce Change Tenman Zyanayu, intending to exhaust Bai Yu's physical strength from the physical point of view. As Bai Yu smashed Kokushibo's sword energy with one knife after another, the aftershocks of the attack and impact spread around again and again. Seeing that Kokushibo had not been able to retract his moves, Bai Yu soon knew Kokushibo's intention. Although Kokushibo's idea was good, it seemed a bit naive to use it on Bai Yu. Bai Yu would naturally not be stupid enough to fight a war of attrition with him, because there was no need. Then, Bai Yu was seen waving the demon-slaying sword in his hand, while walking towards Kokushibo. Kokushibo's moves were launched through its own rotation, so it was unlikely to move. But as the distance approached, Bai Yu's knife speed also increased, because the closer the distance, the shorter the time the sword energy touched Bai Yu, so Bai Yu had to speed up his knife speed. Finally, Bai Yu approached Kokushibo leisurely. The distance was shortened, so that Bai Yu's attack could already touch Kokushibo. Bai Yu's next slash hit Kokushibo's ghost sword, and Bai Yu slash interrupted Kokushibo's attack. Bai Yu, who can also use the transparent world, completely hid his breath, so even if Kokushibo was in the field of the transparent world, it was impossible for him to sense Bai Yu's approach. In addition, Kokushibo's rotation speed was also very fast, so under this speed of rotation, Kokushibo could not clearly perceive the change of Bai Yu's position. Kokushibo could only judge Bai Yu's situation by the energy shock generated by the collision of the two attacks when Bai Yu parried the attack. Although Kokushibo sensed that the energy shock was getting closer and closer to him, Kokushibo never thought that it was because Bai Yu was close to him. So when Bai Yu appeared in front of Kokushibo and interrupted Kokushibo's attack, Kokushibo was shocked. Because Kokushibo didn't expect that Bai Yu not only parried his attack, but also approached him and interrupted his attack. Kokushibo was very familiar with his own moves. This kind of attack was unlikely to be close to him, because the closer he got to Kokushibo, the more dangerous it would be. However, after thinking about it carefully, Kokushibo felt that Bai Yu could indeed do it. Chapter 794 Suppression. Is it fun to spin in circles? After Bai Yu interrupted Kokushibo's moves, he could not help but mock Kokushibo. Hearing this, Kokushibo was naturally very angry, because Bai Yu's words were just belittling him. You are too arrogant. Kokushibo replied coldly. Breathing of the moon, landform, long moon lone moon Mujian. After saying this, Kokushibo changed his moves and used his own chain slashes. This time, Bai Yu did not choose to use water surface slash chain slash to respond. When Kokushibo started, Bai Yu's left hand had already grasped the sunblade worn on his waist and then pulled the sunblade out of the scabbard at a very fast speed and finally pushed it back. Water breathing, form 12, dark blade strangling. Kokushibo's dense slashes collided with the dense sword energy generated by Bai Yu, and Bai Yu used the protection of dark blade strangling to counterattack from Kokushibo's attack loophole. Wood breathing, form 1, wood invasion stab explosion. The demon slaying sword overflowing with wood essence, under Bai Yu's control, penetrated Kokushibo's attack loophole and stabbed directly into Kokushibo's chest. Bai Yu's attack made Kokushibo feel a very dangerous smell. Kokushibo knew very well that, if he was attacked by this attack, even if he didn't die, Bai Yu would probably seize the opportunity and then completely kill him. At the first moment, Kokushibo interrupted his attack and used the blade of the demon sword to block Bai Yu's stab. Kokushibo's reactions were very extreme. It can be said that, even if he was half a beat slower, the situation might be different. As Kokushibo blocked with his limit, the demon slaying sword in Bai Yu's hand stabbed into Kokushibo's blade. Bai Yu's stabbing force was very strong. Kokushibo blocked with the demon sword, and Kokushibo's body was directly pushed back several meters. Compared with the time in Hanase, the reason why Bai Yu is now able to suppress Kokushibo slightly in normal times is entirely because Bai Yu is familiar with the use of transparent world and stripes after being in Hanase. At that time in Hanase, if Bai Yu and Kokushibo continued to fight, even if the influence of sunlight was eliminated, Bai Yu would still be able to defeat Kokushibo, because at that time Bai Yu was able to fight Kokushibo on equal terms. However, after fighting with Kokushibo for a few moves, Kokushibo chose to retreat because of time, and Bai Yu did not choose to pursue Kokushibo in order to save Kocho Shinobu, Ringoku Kajiro and Juza Tenjin. But as Kokushibo's body slid backwards, Kokushibo's demon sword suddenly couldn't withstand Bai Yu's strong stimulation and broke in an instant. The breaking of the demon sword suddenly made Kokushibo lose its resistance. Bai Yu's demon sword lost its resistance and stabbed Kokushibo again. Although Kokushibo used the twisting of his body to try to avoid Bai Yu's attack at the moment when the demon sword broke, the speed of Bai Yu's thrust was not weakened much by Kokushibo's previous obstruction, and the speed was still extremely fast. Kokushibo's twisting of his body did not completely avoid Bai Yu's thrust attack, but only slightly changed the original point of the thrust. The thrust attack that was supposed to pierce Kokushibo's heart pierced the position near the collarbone due to the twisting of Kokushibo's body. Chapter 795 Cemetery. While Xingming and the battle were going on in the Island of Sorrow, Tanjiro, who had already rested, came to a cemetery under the guidance of Yashiro and the crow, and smelled a strong smell of blood in the cemetery. This space is completely different from other spaces. Other spaces are indoor spaces, while this space is outdoor space. There are many tombstones in the cemetery. Tanjiro looked at the words on the tombstones, and then each tombstone was engraved with the 3-word swordsmith. This made Tanjiro very confused. Did he come to the ancestral tomb of the swordsmith village? But why is the ancestral tomb of the swordsmith village here? Soon, Tanjiro saw a towering tree in the center of the cemetery. From the size and scale of the tree, it can be seen that this tree is definitely an ancient tree with many years. After that, Tanjiro saw many corpses piled up under the ancient tree. The strong smell of blood made Tanjiro frown. Obviously, the source of the bloody smell is these piles of corpses. Judging from the freshness of these corpses, the death time should not exceed 3 days. Looking at these piles of corpses, Tanjiro found that these corpses included not only members of the Demon Slayer Corps, but also many women, girls, children, and men. The longer he looked at the scene in front of him, the more uncomfortable Tanjiro felt. Tanjiro roughly estimated that there were at least 300 or 400 dead people. Thinking about it, Tanjiro felt that the sins of Muzan Kibutsuji were enough to make him die 1,000 or 10,000 times, and then go to hell to suffer endless torture. Anger suddenly surged in his heart, making Tanjiro's heart beat faster and his blood boil. Soon Tanjiro adjusted his emotions, and put these negative emotions behind him. Because now is not the time to think about these things. What Tanjiro has to do now is to eradicate Muzan Kibutsuji as soon as possible, so as to prevent such a tragedy from happening again. Then, Tanjiro looked up at the towering tree that was nearly dozens of meters high, and then found a tumor hanging on this ancient tree. Is that Muzan Kibutsuji? Tanjiro muttered as he looked at the tumor. Because there were too many corpses here, and the smell of blood was too strong, Tanjiro's nose could no longer smell anything else. The tumor was far from the ground, so Tanjiro could only choose to climb up to the top of the ancient tree, and then choose to observe it at close range. Tanjiro, like a clever monkey, quickly jumped to the middle of the ancient tree with his agile body movements, and then stopped in a thick branch. Then, Tanjiro looked up at the tumor again, and found that the tumor was hanging on the ancient tree through synapses. Because the tumor was not huge, against the backdrop of this huge ancient tree, the tumor was like the fruit of the ancient tree. Therefore, the synapses on the tumor were not very clear at the bottom of the ancient tree. However, Tanjiro's expression suddenly changed when he looked at the tumor. Tanjiro saw 2 faces growing outside the tumor, one of which was Tamayo's face and the other was Sasayama's face. Miss Tamayo. Tanjiro shouted at the top of his lungs, but there was no response. Both Tamayo and Sasayama seemed to be in a coma. Are they being devoured by Muzan Kibutsuji? We have to find a way to save them. Tanjiro muttered. If you're listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means they downloaded and uploaded it without effort. We cordially invite you to visit our channel, Mundo Fanfic Novelos. There you'll find the original version of this story and you can explore many other novels of various genres. We're waiting for you to immerse yourself in a world of incredible novels. Chapter 796, Tumor on the Ancient Tree. Water Breathing. Form 11. Water Shadow Slash. Tanjiro immediately took rescue action, using Water Shadow Slash to cut off the synapse of the tumor, and then let the tumor fall to the ground. Just when Tanjiro used Water Shadow Slash to cut off a synapse, the tumor suddenly reacted, and a head grew out on that tumor. That head was Muzan Kibutsuji. Muzan Kibutsuji soon discovered Tanjiro, so he looked at Tanjiro and warned him, "You don't know how to live or die. That useless guy Akaza, if he didn't choose to commit suicide, you and the water pillar would have died." From Muzan Kibutsuji's words, you can hear that Muzan Kibutsuji is very dissatisfied with Akaza. Muzan Kibutsuji's dissatisfaction is not that Akaza is not strong enough, but that he chose to self-destruct at a critical moment, even after overcoming the decapitation. If Akaza had not chosen to self-destruct, then Akaza, who had overcome the decapitation, would definitely have been able to kill Tanjiro and Tomioka Giyu, which would have been of great help to Muzan Kibutsuji's situation. When Tanjiro heard Muzan Kibutsuji mention Akaza, he immediately shouted angrily, "You idiot. Mr. Akaza must have been used by you to become a demon. He is actually kind-hearted, and you took away his kindness. Although Tanjiro did not know Akaza's life experience, from the smell that Akaza emitted before his death, Tanjiro could be sure that Akaza was a kind-hearted person when he was a human. I didn't. Akaza has always been a bad guy. He has loved stealing since he was a child. When he was still a human, he had killed more than 20 people. I thought he was a talent for being a ghost, so I turned him into a ghost. Is such a bad guy a good guy in your eyes? Just because Akaza spared your life, does he become a good guy? Well, I'll be a good guy for once, and I'll spare your life too. Get out of here now. Musen not only mocked Tanjiro, but also thought that Tanjiro's ideas were really simple and naive. Hearing this, Tanjiro was not affected by Musen's words. Because Tanjiro felt that Musen was just talking nonsense and didn't understand what he meant at all, and Tanjiro didn't believe that Musen was telling the truth. Musen must have concealed the real situation. Stop talking nonsense. I'm not here to argue with you. Prepare to die. Tanjiro immediately saw through Musen Kibutsuji's idea of delaying time by talking to him, so he stopped talking. God of Fire Kagura, round dance flash. Tanjiro attacked without saying a word, intending to use round dance flash to chop off Musen Kibutsuji's head that grew out of the tumor. Seeing this, Musen Kibutsuji couldn't help but sneer. Naive. Even if you chop my neck, I still won't die. You're the one who will die. The reason why Musen Kibutsuji hates Tanjiro so much is because he sees the shadow of Tsugakuni Yoriichi in Tanjiro, and Tsugakuni Yoriichi is the one who left a psychological shadow on Musen Kibutsuji. Although Kokushibo and Tsugakuni Yoriichi look more similar, Kokushibo gives Musen Kibutsuji a different feeling than Tsugakuni Yoriichi. Chapter 797 Blinded Eyes. In other words, what Musen really hates is not the appearance of Tsugakuni Yoriichi, but the feeling that Tsugakuni Yoriichi gives people. Of course, apart from this, Musen will not feel disgusted with Kokushibo. The most fundamental reason is that Kokushibo is a demon, the strongest, upper-rank demon, his subordinate, and is completely under his control. Secondly, Kokushibo and Tsugakuni Yoriichi are completely different except for their similar appearance. Although Tanjiro does not look like Tsugakuni Yoriichi, his words and deeds are too similar to Tsugakuni Yoriichi, so Musen hates Tanjiro. Just when Tanjiro was flashing away from Musen, who had turned into a tumor, Musen's tumorous body suddenly proliferated many synapses, and the synapses stabbed in the direction of Tanjiro. Before Tanjiro got close to Musen Kibutsuji, one of Tanjiro's eyes was blinded by synapses, and the synapses that were supposed to pierce Tanjiro's head were suddenly cut off by some external force, so Tanjiro avoided the fate of being pierced through the head by synapses. However, Tanjiro still paid a considerable price, that is, he lost an eye. It can be said that this is the most serious injury Tanjiro has suffered in his ghost hunting career. The eye was blinded, and Tanjiro felt that Bai Yu's wood spirit could not restore it. Because the eye was damaged and blinded by external forces, the eyeball tissue was already damaged. To put it bluntly, the eyeball of one of Tanjiro's eyes is now rotten. Unless Bai Yu's wood spirit can regenerate these damaged tissues and make the eyeball intact, it is absolutely impossible to cure it. He almost died directly at the hands of Musen Kibutsuji at the beginning, which made Tanjiro feel greatly shocked. If someone hadn't rescued Tanjiro, Tanjiro knew that the synapse would not only blind his eyes, but would directly pierce his head. Who saved him? This was the first question that Tanjiro thought of when he was falling after being attacked. Was it Bai Yu? The only person Tanjiro could think of, or the first person he would think of, was Bai Yu. Just as Tanjiro was falling, Tanjiro was caught by someone, and the person who caught Tanjiro was none other than the snake pillar Iguro Abane. On the other side, after dodging the synapse attack, Kanroji Mitsuri successfully approached Musen Kibutsuji. Just as Kanroji Mitsuri swung her knife at Musen Kibutsuji suddenly disconnected the synapse connecting to the ancient tree, causing him to fall due to gravity. Musen Kibutsuji's choice made Kanroji Mitsuri's attack fail. The reason why Tanjiro failed to dodge Musen's thrust attack was because of the move. Although the round dance flashes very fast, the path of the move is basically fixed in a straight line and cannot be changed. It's okay if the enemy has no ability to react. Once they have the ability to react, they will attack directly in the direction of Tanjiro's advance like Musen, which will definitely force Tanjiro back or hit him. Therefore, it is actually extremely stupid to approach Musen in this way. In addition, Musen's thrust attack speed is also extremely fast. If Tanjiro cannot react when facing him, he will be hit by the opponent's attack. Chapter 798 The final battle begins. Tanjiro is in such a situation. With his high speed, he faces a very fast counter-attack from the opponent, which greatly compresses Tanjiro's reaction time. If Tanjiro chooses to defend, he should be able to dodge Musen Kibutsuji's synaptic attack. Even if he can't dodge it completely, Tanjiro can definitely minimize the risk. You're in the way. Hide. Iguro Abane, who saved Tanjiro, didn't care about Tanjiro at all, and didn't even care about Tanjiro's blinded eyes. Instead, he felt that Tanjiro was hindering him from dealing with Musen Kibutsuji. Iguro Abane saved Tanjiro because they were all members of the Demon Slayer Corps. After saying that, Iguro Abane threw Tanjiro on a thick branch. Mr. Iguro. Tanjiro couldn't help but shout after knowing that it was Iguro Abane who saved him. However, Tanjiro was not angry because Iguro Abane looked down on him. It was indeed because of Tanjiro's irrational attack that he got in the way. I won't hide. I will eliminate Musen Kibutsuji. Tanjiro said to Iguro Abane with a firm attitude. Musen Kibutsuji, who fell into the pile of corpses, immediately swallowed several corpses into his body. Then, Musen Kibutsuji's tumorous body began to change, and human limbs and torso were gathered. However, Musen Kibutsuji's limbs and torso had many mouths without lips and exposed fangs. On Musen Kibutsuji's chest, there was also a face of Tameo. It is estimated that Tameo has not been completely swallowed by Musen Kibutsuji. However, Musen Kibutsuji's face was full of surprise and confusion. Mitsuri Kanroji and Abana Iguro had already jumped down from the old tree and stood not far from Musen Kibutsuji, stepping on the piles of corpses. Although Mitsuri Kanroji and Abana Iguro did not want to do this, there was really no other place to stay. Aren't you dead? What is Mingnu doing? Musen Kibutsuji shouted angrily, questioning not only Mitsuri Kanroji and Abana Iguro, but also Mingnu. From Musen Kibutsuji's reaction, Iguro Abana was very sure that Yoshiro was on their side. You ask me what I'm doing. I'm controlling this stinky woman. You idiot. If something happens to Miss Tameo, you will be buried with her tonight. Yoshiro's voice suddenly rang out from all around. The voice seemed to come from a distance, but it was impossible to determine the direction. It seemed that Yoshiro's voice was heard in every direction. Hearing this, Musen soon understood what was going on and became even more angry. He then sarcastically said, "So he's Tameo's lackey. What an annoying guy. I'm about to completely devour Tameo's rascal. I'm going to send you and the demon hunters of the Demon Slayer Corps to the ground now. Musen, just wait to be killed by the sun," Yoshiro said very viciously. Just as Yoshiro was about to control Naruto and teleport Musen, Tanjiro, Mitsuri Kanroji, and Iguro Abane to the ground, Yoshiro suddenly discovered that Naruto seemed to be out of his control, but Naruto did not leave the illusion. Chapter 799, Fight for Control. Soon, Yoshiro discovered that it was Musen Kibutsuji who was forcibly controlling Naruto. That is, Musen Kibutsuji was fighting with Yoshiro for control of Naruto. Yoshiro would naturally not let Musen Kibutsuji succeed. If Musen Kibutsuji gained control of Naruto, the situation would be bad. Hurry up and attack. Musen Kibutsuji is trying to take control of Naruto from me. Yoshiro also knew that he could not defeat Musen Kibutsuji with his own ability, so he could only ask for help from Mitsuri Kanroji and Abana Iguro. Upon hearing this, Mitsuri Kanroji was the first to take action. Breath of Love, 1 form, Thrill of First Love. Breath of Snake, 2 form, Venomous Fang. And Abana Iguro followed Mitsuri Kanroji and attacked Musen Kibutsuji. Mitsuri Kanriji's attack was from the front, while Abane Igiro's attack was from behind, and the two's attacks formed a double team. The attacks of Kanriji Mitsuri and Igiro Abane forced Muzan Kibutsuji to use some of his energy to deal with them, which naturally affected Muzan Kibutsuji's fight for control of Naruto. Many vine-like tentacles grew out of Muzan Kibutsuji's back, and at the end of these tentacles were extremely sharp and hard bone spurs. These tentacles, which had bone spurs at the ends, and could stretch and twist freely, seemed to have vitality, and blocked the attacks of Kanriji Mitsuri and Igiro Abane. Love Breath, 5 type, Wavering Love. When Kanriji Mitsuri faced the counter-attack of Muzan Kibutsuji's tentacles, she immediately changed her moves and used Waving Love. Igiro Abane, who was behind, saw that the attack from behind did not hit Muzan Kibutsuji, so she also changed her moves immediately. Snake Breathing, Form 3, Nesting. I saw the snake-like twisting Nichirin sword in Igiro Abane's hand, under his swing, slashing like a giant python, immediately coiling around its prey to strangle it, and the twisting sword path was like a fierce giant python. Just when Kanriji Mitsuri and Igiro Abane were fighting fiercely with Muzan Kibutsuji, Tanjiro did not listen to Igiro Abane's words and hide, but after recovering and adjusting his state, he jumped down from the tree, and right below Tanjiro was where Muzan Kibutsuji was standing. As he fell, Tanjiro activated the water breathing Taketsubo, intending to strike Muzan Kibutsuji violently from above. Water breathing, Form 8, Taketsubo. Feeling the violent fluctuations in the air above his head, Muzan Kibutsuji immediately looked up. The haunted fellow. Muzan couldn't help but mutter in his heart, and then his arm suddenly stretched out to the sky. Then, like a golden hoop, his arm suddenly became longer, and he actively pressed towards Tanjiro. When Muzan's arm pressed towards Tanjiro, the shape of the fist of his arm changed, and turned into a mouth with fangs and a big mouth. It looked as if it was going to eat Tanjiro. Seeing this, Tanjiro knew that, if he chose to continue falling, he would definitely be eaten. So, Tanjiro could only temporarily change his moves and use the train. Tanjiro could also use a water wheel, but Tanjiro felt that the train, breathed by the god of fire Kagura, was more lethal, so he used the train. Chapter 800, What a Troublesome Guy. Tanjiro changed his moves and used the train, and suddenly turned into a spinning fire wheel. As Tanjiro turned his body, the flaming sunblade cut Muzan Kibutsuji's lengthened arm like a saw blade. However, Muzan Kibutsuji's cut arm suddenly split into many tentacles. The tentacles entangled Tanjiro tightly, blocking all of Tanjiro's movements. Oh no. Tanjiro couldn't help but think in his heart, and then he tried to struggle to break free at the first time, but the result was not satisfactory. Tanjiro's strength was not enough to fight Muzan Kibutsuji. Tanjiro. Kanriji Mitsuri also noticed Tanjiro's movements at the first time, and couldn't help but worry about Tanjiro. As Kanriji Mitsuri called out, Igiro Abane also looked at Tanjiro, and then couldn't help but complain, "What a troublesome guy." Snake breathing, pickup form, Anaconda appears. Then Igiro Abane used his strongest breathing move, Anaconda appears. This move consumes a lot of energy to use, because the move requires a lot of breathing rhythm to maintain, and this move can only be used when it is in full state. If Igiro Abane is seriously injured, it is absolutely impossible to use this move, because Igiro Abane's body can't bear it. As Igiro Abane used Anaconda appears, the breathing rhythm in Igiro Abane's body was so strong that it overflowed, and white airflow floated in the air, but these airflows were different from mist. Then the white breathing rhythms that overflowed quickly condensed together and turned into a giant white python. The giant python looked extremely fierce and scary, and it hissed a warning at Muzan Kibutsuji, as if it was threatening him. After the roar, the giant python immediately entangled Muzan Kibutsuji. But in fact, it was the breathing rhythm that bound Muzan Kibutsuji, because the giant python was actually just a virtual image transformed by the breathing rhythm. After briefly controlling Muzan Kibutsuji, Mitsuri Kanriji took advantage of this brief opportunity to rescue Tanjiro, and Tanjiro, who fell from the air, was quickly caught in Kanriji Mitsuri's arms. Immediately afterwards, Muzan Kibutsuji broke free from the stranglehold of the giant python of Igiro Abane, and dealt a fierce blow to the giant python. Although the giant python was condensed by Agiro Abane using the breathing rhythm, it is an illusion and has no direct connection with Agiro Abane itself. But when the giant python is hit hard, the breathing rhythm that condensed into the giant python can be dispersed or disrupted. Therefore, the disorder of the breathing rhythm will still have an impact on Agiro Abane. Unless Agiro Abane chooses not to use the breathing rhythm to maintain the form of the giant python before or after the giant python is attacked, the damage can be minimized or completely avoided. Although Agiro Abane dispersed the breathing rhythm as soon as the giant python was attacked, the previous attacks of Muzan Kibutsuji still caused Agiro Abane to suffer a certain impact. Mitsuri-chan, don't worry about that troublesome kid. It's more important to deal with Muzan Kibutsuji. Agiro Abane immediately yelled at Mitsuri Kanraji. End of this chapter. Thank you very much for reaching the end. Don't forget to like. Looking for more exclusive content and immediate access? Subscribe to our Patreon. Remember, every like, subscription, or donation encourages us to continue. Thanks to everyone. See you in the next video.